I would start working on my own projects, many great projects involving technology. The very first dial-in-joke machine ever in the San Francisco Bay Area. I saw Pong in a bowling alley, and I was stunned. I said, I want this. Oh my gosh. I could never afford something like a printer, which is the output device of a computer. Input and output devices cost a fortune. I would never be able to save that much money. But all of a sudden I thought, my gosh, I have a television at home. I know all the television signals from high school electronics. I can build any little computer device in the world with my knowledge. I'll build a little machine that puts dots on the TV set that are balls and paddles and plays Pong. And I built a little device with 28 $1 chips that play Pong. Well, Steve Jobs came back from college in Oregon and he saw it. And he took my board, my design, down to Atari. And I don't know if they knew I designed it or if they thought he designed it, but they gave him a job on the spot. So now he was working at Atari. Steve, he was very young, and he was like a lot of young people you know. They're just sort of too much energy, and they just want to talk to anybody, and they want to throw their opinions into every decision being made. That impresses high-up people sometimes in companies. Steve was always able to impress high-up people, but it gets on the nerves of other people, that Steve's challenging the ways that they do things that they've been doing for 10 or 20 years and they know what they're doing. So they had to move Steve to the night shift where he worked all alone by himself. And I didn't know that at the time, but looking back I can totally understand it. So, Steve came to me and said, Atari is tired. The owner of Atari doesn't like the fact that their games, their arcade games in those days, are taking, it was hardware, not software in those days. They're taking 90 chips, 110 chips, 130 chips, 150 chips, 190 chips for a game. And they know that I design things with almost no chips at all. I had become so skilled. I was known for the skill of Packard too. So Steve came and said they wanted me to design a one-player version of Pong for Atari. Atari was in Los Gatos, California, where I live now. Los Gatos, California is very proud of having been the birthplace of arcade games. But Los Gatos is even more proud of a different invention that came out of our town, which was the pet rock. Some of you might have had a pet rock in time, probably still own it. So I went in and Steve said, okay, I said, I would love to design this game for Atari. I'll design a game that young kids that I love so much are going to play in bowling alleys and in arcade centers. And Steve said, there's a hitch. You have to do it in 4 days. This was a man-year project. 4 days. Okay, I was the hottest designer in the world in my mind. And I told him I didn't think I could do it, but I would take the challenge on. And I sat down. I did not sleep for 4 days and nights. I got mononucleosis, the sleeping sickness, and so did Steve Jobs. And I came up with some clever designs my way, and we delivered a board to Atari for the game Breakout, where we hit balls against bricks. So that was mine. While I was there, I was in a sleepless state. My mind is kind of going in and out, not knowing exactly what's real all the time. And all of the games on the floor had these big old televisions, the old-style hot televisions, and they were all black and white TVs. One of the video games on the floor had a little dot moving from left to right and right to left, just going back and forth on the screen, changing colors. And I thought, oh my God, did they actually make a color version? Color television was very difficult and exotic. It took like $1,000 for all the parts that obeyed differential calculus rules to mix sine waves of the different colors and phases and brightnesses. It was so difficult to build. Did they do it? No, they just had little Milo strips, red, green, blue, yellow, on the TV set. I couldn't even figure it out, but I went back to the lab bench, and I was sitting here, and Steve was wiring up my design over there. I designed everything. And actually, that was a good partnership. After Steve ran into somebody like me, there was no sense for him trying to be a designer of anything, because I would always crank out great designs. So I was sitting here kind of thinking, color TV, and I thought, what is color TV anyway? Well, I went back to high school electronics. It's a signal that goes up and down, just like waves, but it goes up and down at exactly the right rate. And a TV thinks it's color, if it does. It can be on top of a whole bunch of other jingling signals doing other things, but if inside of that is a signal going up and down at exactly the right rate, it's color. And then something popped in my head. What if I put out zeros and ones? That went up. 0, 1, 0. 1 is up, 0 is down. 1 is up, 0 is down. What if I put that out at exactly the right rate? I knew the way TVs are made, it would think it's color. There had never been any book in the world that had ever talked about color television in terms of ones and zeros. My thinking was always totally original. I never copied anything from data sheets or books. Because I believe that you're taught the skills of an engineer, you make your own thing. You don't copy other people's programs and all that. So I thought of this idea. I thought of this little $1 chip with 4 ones and zeros in it. There are 16 different combinations of ones and zeros. And I thought, rotating around, it's going to be kind of like 16 different colors. Would it work? It's never been in a book. It could be never allowed as a project in a company. It could never be allowed as a successful project at a university. Would it work? It was going to be one of the most important discoveries and inventions of my life. Not long after this breakout game experience, I saw somebody in a house typing on a big teletype, these big metal machines that are heavy and they cost as much as a car, and he was talking to a computer across the country. The ARPANET had been created by the U.S. military. The ARPANET connected about 10 universities together in those days. Just about 10 universities. You could print out a list of them on the printer, and then choose one of those computers at MIT or at Stanford or the University of Utah, and you could go and run programs on those computers. It was the forerunner of what we call the internet today. I saw it, and just like Pong, I said, I have to have this. Wait a minute. If I can buy a keyboard that you type on, then I can type into a device that I designed that puts letters on my TV set. And I'll type to a computer in Boston. The computer in Boston will talk to my TV set. And I built that device, and it worked. And I had this little terminal. Well, Steve Jobs was going back and forth between an orchard he worked on up in Oregon, and he came home and saw it. He said, oh, there's this company locally that sells terminals that you type on to connect to computers. They sell them to businesses. They rent them, but they're high priced. Yours is so cheap and small. And sure enough, he went and sold them. I think it was the fourth time that something I designed just for my own fun, Steve turned into money. So I had a great life. I was doing what I enjoyed, and Steve always found a way to get us a little money. Steve went back up to Oregon, where he worked on his orchard. I always hoped they had apple trees there. And we'll get to that later. And a club started up called the Homebrew Computer Club. And I'm looking back, and I don't believe the number of lucky incidences in my life, from when I found the first journals in a closet at home that taught me something about logic. But I got to go to the first meeting of the Homebrew Computer Club. A friend told me it was for people who had video terminals and things. And I had just designed a video terminal. So I was going to show off. I was going to be Superman and a master. And I got to this meeting, and everybody was talking about something totally different. It was about little computer kits you could buy and bolt together and have switches and lights for ones and zeros, and type some ones and zeros and push a button and they go into memory, and it was called an Altair computer. It had been on the cover of Popular Electronics magazine, and it was based on a microprocessor. And everybody in the club was talking microprocessors, whatever that was. I had missed out on them, designing calculators at Hewlett Packard. Well, I went home that night very scared that this club was not for me. But I took home a data sheet of a microprocessor that they passed out. And I studied it. And I said, oh my gosh, these microprocessors are just like the computers I used to design back in high school. Oh my gosh. They're just like the computer that I built, the cream soda computer, when I met Steve Jobs 5 years before. I said, oh my gosh. It popped into my head right then. I can buy this one little microprocessor chip somehow. I know it's $400, so I can't really afford it. But I can buy a microprocessor chip and plug it into my little typing terminal, And now I can type to my own computer, and it can type to my television set. So I had the formula in my head for how to build a 4K computer that night.